guys, welcome to or welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Tony and I run Bloomstitch Studios. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make this granny square bag. I made this on a whim a couple months ago. I just thought I want a really cute granny square bag. Granny square is one of my favourite things to make, and this is what I came up with, and I had a lot of people request on TikTok and also on YouTube for me to make a pattern for this, so I've decided to do a little video tutorial for you guys. The pattern is basically made up of 3 granny squares and then a little bow tie at the top, and I think it turned out super cute. So we're going to be making another one of these today. I'm going to show you step by step how to do it, and I'm super excited to see you guys make your own versions of this. This tutorial will be aimed at more advanced beginners, just because I will be going over how to do each stitch, but I will not be going over it a million times. I will just be like, this is how you do a double crochet. So if you need more practice on your basic stitches, then check out some other videos on YouTube, but this one will be me basically just showing you how to make it so that you can follow it along. I am going to be making this in US terms. I will put down in the description below a little conversion chart if you want to make this in UK terms. I just personally prefer US terms. They make more sense in my brain. This is one of my first tutorials on this channel, so I hope it is okay for you, and let's get making. So for this bag you are going to be needing your yarn. I am using Drops Paris, which is a Aran Weight Cotton Yarn. I am using colours 44, 17 and 41 for this variation of the bag. This is my favourite weight of cotton yarn. I love Drops Paris, it's so cheap and affordable. So this is what I'm using. I will put on the screen the exact number of skeins that you need for this bag with this yarn, because I can't quite remember as I'm filming this. I'm using up yarn from my yarn stash, so for me this is a stash busting project. You will need a 4.5mm hook for the main body of the bag and a 4mm hook for the straps. I'm using Clover Amours. You will also need a darning needle and also a pair of scissors. So the stitches that you're going to need for this bag are a single crochet, a double crochet, single crochet 3 together, and slip stitching, because we slip stitch the granny squares together. You also need to know how to do the granny stitch. I'll obviously give a brief explanation on how to do these. This is mainly just how to make the bag itself. So grabbing your first colour, I'll be using this scrap of off-white. We are going to make the startings of a granny square. So you need to find your end. Here it is, and you're going to need your 4.5mm hook. And we're going to make a magic circle. You can do a chain 4 start if you like for your granny squares. For me personally, I just prefer a magic circle / magic ring start. So how I make this is I put 2 fingers together, I wrap the yarn round and make an X, flip my fingers over, insert my hook underneath this first loop and over the second, so we kind of hook it underneath like so, twist, and pull up a loop. And then I always make sure that I'm holding the side of the ring with 2 strands on this side. That is my yarn holding side, and then I just have the single side over here. So we're gonna pull up a loop, yarn over, insert into the circle, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So this is our starting chain, and which counts as a double crochet, and this is our first double crochet of our cluster of 3. So we're going to repeat that again. We're going to yarn over, insert into the circle, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So now we have our first cluster of 3. We're going to chain 2 for the corner, yarn over, insert into the loop, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull up a loop, or yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. We're going to repeat this round until we have 4 clusters of 3 double crochets. Remembering when we get to the corner, we're going to chain 2. And also making sure to crochet over both of these strands. If you need to slow this video down at all, then please do. I will be obviously briefly showing you how to do each of these stitches, but after I've done a few, I will pick up the pace a little bit. So we have 4 of our clusters of 3, so now we're going to do our final chain 2 for our final corner. So what I like to do before I slip stitch into our first stitch is I like to take our end and pull, which closes our magic ring. Give it a nice tug like so, and that has closed our ring. And then what we're going to do is we're going to slip stitch into this first stitch here. So insert, so we have both of these on our hook, yarn over, pull through, and then pull straight through the loop that was on our hook. And that is our first round of our granny square complete. For my granny squares, I like to turn my granny squares each round. So instead of slip stitching over to this next corner, what we're going to do is chain 2. That builds up the height of our double crochet, and this counts as our first stitch. And then we're going to turn our work. We're going to yarn over and we're going to insert into this corner here. We're going to yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and again yarn over, insert into the corner, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And now we need to work a corner, so we're going to chain 2, yarn over, insert into this same corner that we were working in for this cluster of 3, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and repeat that until we have our cluster of 3. So now we have a corner of our second row. When working into this next corner, I don't chain in between my clusters. That's just the look that I prefer, but obviously you can chain if you want to. For me, I don't, so I'm going to yarn over and insert into this next corner without chaining. So it looks like this. So we're going to do that 2 more times. So we have our cluster of 3. And now we need to work a corner again. So we're going to chain 2, yarn over into this same corner, like so. And this is how you can see the granny square starting to build up. Like so. And now we need to work into this next corner. So again, no chains, we're just going to yarn over, insert into the next corner, and complete our double crochet. We're going to chain 2 for our corner, inserting into this same hole, like so, and then moving on to the final corner. We're going to insert into this stitch, which is the top of our first double crochet. We're going to yarn over, pull through the loop, and pull straight through the next loop. And then we're going to yarn over, pull through, and making sure you leave enough to be able to weave in the end. And we're going to cut this. And that is our first colour complete of our granny square. So now we're going to grab our second colour. I'm going to be using colour 41 from Drops Paris, and we're going to complete the next 2 rows using this colour. If you already know how to make a granny square, then feel free to skip ahead to the points where I just tell you what colour we're using next so that you can create the pattern that I used in the first bag. If not, if you want to see how to do the next row of a granny square, then keep following along. So to start off our next colour, we're going to find the end, we're going to leave a little bit of a tail, and we're going to create a slip knot. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold the yarn, using our 2 fingers again, we're going to wrap over, creating that X. We're going to pop our hook underneath the first loop, over the second, and instead of twisting our hook here, we're just going to let go, and that pulls into a slip knot, which we can use to attach to our granny square. What I like to do when I'm attaching a new colour to a granny square is I like to go kind of for the opposite corner of where I finished. So we're going to go for this corner, and we need to remember to flip our granny square over so we're working on the back side. So because we finished over here, I'm going to start in this corner over here, insert our hook into this corner and pull up a loop. So then we have 2 on our hook. I'm going to yarn over, pull through, and then I'm going to chain 1. And this has built our height for our double crochet, and this counts as a stitch. So now we're going to continue the same as we did before. We're going to yarn over, insert into the same hole, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and once more, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And I always like to make sure I'm pulling my stitches so that they are nice and tight in the corner, because we have to fit 3 more stitches over on this side. We're now going to work a corner again, so we're going to chain 2, yarn over, insert into the same hole, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. 2 more times. And there we have our first finished corner in the yellow colour. So now what we're going to do, we're not going to be working a corner into this stitch, we're just going to be working a normal granny stitch. So what we're going to do is, we're not chaining, remember, in between our clusters, so we're going to yarn over, insert into this hole, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, insert into this gap, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and 1 more time. And that creates a cluster of 3 along our side of our square. Now we're back at a corner again. We're going to be working this same corner formation again. So moving straight on without chaining into our granny square corner, we're gonna just repeat the same as what we have before. Always remembering to do a cluster of 3 for a granny stitch. Chaining 2 in the corner and creating another cluster of 3 double crochets. Like so. So now we're going to be repeating what we did with this middle cluster again. So we're just going to work straight into this gap here, creating a cluster of 3. And again, repeating the corner. So now we have worked 2 sides together. You're just going to be repeating this pattern all the way around. So I will meet you back when we have finished this final cluster of 3 here. So now we are back at the beginning of the round, and we are just going to slip stitch into this V right here. So we're going to insert our hook, yarn over, pull through both of the loops, and pull straight through these again. So now for the next row, we're continuing on in this colour. So what we're going to do, we're going to chain 2 to build up the height of a double crochet, turn our granny square over, yarn over, and insert into this loop here, and complete our double crochet. And another one, and that creates our cluster of 3. And that creates our cluster of 3. This next gap that we're working into is not a corner, so we just need to work 1 cluster of 3 into there. So we're gonna yarn over, insert straight into the gap, yarn over, pull through 2, and complete our cluster of 3. And now we have 2 clusters along the side, and we're now going to be working into a corner stitch, so that means we need to complete a corner cluster. So again, creating another cluster of 3 double crochets. And then chaining 2 for our corner, turning our granny square, and completing another 3 double crochets in this same gap. So you're just going to be repeating this all the way around again. So you're going to put 1 cluster of 3 double crochets into this gap, 1 cluster into here, and 2 in the corners, remembering to chain 2 for your corners. And I will meet you back around when we're ready to finish the round. So now we're at the end of the round again. We're going to slip stitch into this very first stitch here. We're going to insert our hook into these 2 stitches, yarn over, pull through both of the loops, pull through again, and then we are finished using this colour for this round. So again, we're just going to yarn over and pull up, making sure we're leaving enough of a tail to weave in the end later on, and give it a snip. So now we have completed 4 rounds of our granny square. We're going to be using this off-white colour again for the next round, but just 1 round of the granny square. And repeat the same process again of creating a slip knot. And we need to remember to turn our granny square over again, so we're working on the back side. And as I finish down here, I'm going to work into this top corner over here. And I always start my granny squares in the corner. I think it just looks the neatest. So remembering to pull up a loop and chain 1. And we're just working a round of granny stitches again in this off-white colour, like we normally would. If you need to remind yourself again of how to do the granny stitches, just go further forward into the video towards the start. It is exactly the same process each time. The only difference is when your granny square gets bigger, you will be adding another cluster of 3 along the side without a corner cluster. So on this side, we've got 1, 2, 3 gaps that are going to have a cluster of 3 before we work our corner stitch. And that is the only difference. So we're just going to work our cluster of 3 down the side. And now we've worked those 3, we're just going to be working our corner stitch. Like so. So you're just going to repeat that all the way around again until we get to our joining, and we basically join in exactly the same way. Once you have finished this round, I will join back up with you and we will move on to the next colour. There we have 5 rounds of our granny square. The next round we are just doing one colour of this brown. It is colour 44. We're just doing one round of this, so it's like this, but again, just in brown. So again, joining into a corner and making sure to turn your granny square over. So you're working on the wrong side again. I think this just stops your granny squares from turning, as sometimes you can find the centers of them turn a bit if you don't turn your granny squares after each round. This is just personal preference, you don't have to do this, but this is just what I like to do. So again, I finished over up here, so I'm going to pick a different corner to start in, and I think I'm just going to go over here. And again, just working as you normally would with your granny square. That is your first corner complete. It's a bit hard to see on this background, I'm sorry about that. But on this side, you'll be working 4 clusters of 3, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then you'll be working your corners. And I will meet you back to start the next round. And now what we're going to be doing is a backwards repeat of this pattern that we've created so far. We're going to be doing 5 more granny stitch rows for our granny square, and we're going to be doing 1 row of white, 2 rows of yellow, and 2 rows of white to finish the granny square. This is one that I completed earlier for this bag. I'm sorry I can't fit it all in the frame, it's just a little bit too big, but we have just finished this brown row here, and you can see what I mean by we're just repeating the pattern but backwards. We've got 1 row of white, 2 rows of yellow, and 2 rows of white again. I'm going to meet back once I have completed this granny square so it looks like this one. Just make sure to chain 2 in your corners and turn your granny square over each round so that you are working on the wrong side, and it just helps prevent the granny square from turning. I will meet you back once I have done these rows, and if you want to take a little screenshot so you know what pattern to do, feel free to do so now, and I will meet you guys back once I have completed this granny square. Okay, so I have finished my square. We have completed all of these repeat rows, and now I'm gonna weave in the ends of this square. I recommend weaving in the ends once you have finished each square rather than doing them all at the end, because with granny squares, when you're changing colours a lot, there is a lot of ends to weave in. I'm gonna show you how to weave in this very centre one for our magic circle, and then I'll do another one with you, and then after that I will weave all of mine off camera. Just in case you don't really know how to weave in your ends, this is just how I do it, but I just grab my needle and thread it through. And then for this middle one here, I just kind of go around with the circle a bunch of times. As a rule, you should like go around probably 3 times just to be doubly sure, but I kind of just go until I don't really have much yarn left. And doing it this way, I haven't had one come undone yet, so the more times you go around, the more secure it's going to be, and the less likely it's going to come undone. Because I know a lot of people don't like doing a magic circle because the risk of it coming undone is higher, but weaving my end in this way, I have never really had an issue with it. So just keep going round like so, and that is where I'm going to stop. So I'm just going to cut the end, and then that one's complete. I will also show you how to do an invisible join as well, because that's what I do for this final stitch on the edge. I just think doing an invisible join on this last row makes it easier to slip stitch them together when we come to that part. So you want to just thread your yarn onto your needle. I pass it back through this loop that we did, like so, so that undoes it, but you still got it on your hook, and I pull it loose, so then we're back to here. I then flip it over, I'm trying my best to show you, and I basically just follow the yarn back through. So I'll go through these 2 back loops here, like so, and pull it through. And what that does is it undoes that last stitch, but you're still hooked in this loop. And then what I like to do is I just go through, not this first stitch, but this second one. Pull it nice and tight, like so. And then we're going back through these loops on this side. This is where we came out of, so this is where we're going back in, making sure we're going through both loops on this side. And then you just want to pull that nice and tight, and it creates the illusion of a stitch. And then to weave it in, I just work my way down the stitch on the back. So I just thread it through there, and then I just weave in back and forth along the back. So I always go over this last stitch here, just so that you actually have something to hook around, because if you just go straight back where you just came from, it will come undone. So again, over this strand here, I'm going to go over that and then back through. And I normally do at least 3 times, but sometimes I'll do 4, and going over here I'll go under this time as I went over last time, like so. And that is how I weave in my ends. Just going to cut this. So I'm going to weave in the rest of these ends, and then what you want to do once you've weaved in the ends for your first square is you want to make 2 more of these so that you have 3. And I will meet you back once your ends are weaved and you have made 3 of these squares. Okay, so now we have our 3 squares with our ends weaved in. So sorry about how close up we are, but this is what I'm working with for my very first tutorial. So now what you want to do is you want to get your 4mm hook. This is what we're going to be using to join our squares and also make the straps, so you won't need your 4.5 anymore. And I'm going to be using the off-white colour, which is this colour here, to join my squares, and I'm going to be using some scraps that I have left over from the skeins that I was using. This should be plenty to join your squares with. So you're going to want to take your granny square and make sure it is facing up. How you can tell that is that you can see the V's on the top, so the point of the V is to your right. That's how you can tell that your square is the right way up. This is what the back looks like, and you can kind of see the V's are going to the left, and also this is what it looks like on the back. So you want to make sure your squares are flipped this way, and then what we are going to do is we're going to grab our next square, making sure that that is face up too, and we want to join our squares going up together like this. So what we are going to do is we are going to take our scrap piece of yarn, create a slip knot like so, just like we did earlier with our granny squares. And we're going to be working into the back loop only. When you are working in your V's, this is a front loop here, and this one on the other side is a back loop. So we will be working into the back loops for our slip stitch join. When you have your corner, this is stitch 1 and this is stitch 2. We're going to be working into stitch 2 to create a nice clean corner. So we are just going, I'm trying my best to show you, we're going to be inserting our hook into this second stitch, but only the back loop. And then on square 2, we have our first chain and our second chain, and we're going to be working into this second one. We're also going to insert our yarn into this back loop like so. So you'll have 3 loops on your hook. This is where it gets a bit fiddly, but you need to bring your yarn up underneath your working yarn like so. yarn over, pull through the first loop, pull through the second loop, and pull through that slip stitch that is on our hook. And that is how we join in our yarn. So again, we're going to work into the back loop only. So we're going to take the next stitch, which is this one. So we're going into this next back loop. So we're going to insert our hook. And then we're going into this back loop here. And so we're going to insert again, yarn over, pull through, and pull through. And this is a process that you're going to repeat all the way up the square. So we're going to go into the next back loop here and go into the one on the other side. You're always going from right to left and then pulling through all 3 loops on your hook. And again, insert into the back loop on the right, insert into the next back loop on the left, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops, and this is how you create your slip stitch join. So this is how you create your slip stitch join. It is very beautiful once it's done. It is my favorite method of joining granny squares. You're going to want to work this all the way to the top of your granny square, and I will meet you when we are at this top point. Okay, so now we are at the top of our square. What we're going to do is we're just going to continue working our way around. So we're going to insert into the back loops only, and this should all match up if you've joined into the correct corners at the start. If not, just add an extra join. So join into the same back loop on one side and into the next one on the other side, if that makes sense. I used to do this all the time and it still looks amazing. It doesn't affect it, so don't worry if you haven't matched up perfectly, but if you need to do that, that's absolutely fine. If not, perfect. So what we're then going to do is we need to just continue working on these 2 squares by joining these up. So working the corner in the same exact way. And this is where we're going to start folding the squares in half to create that triangle effect, because we're just going to continue joining these 2 squares together. So again, on the corner, working into the next back loops, like so. Just working our way around. Like so. So you can see that the bag is now starting to fold in half when you're working on it, and that's what you want to see. It does get a little bit fiddly, but you just want to make sure you still go into just the back loops and not the front loops, and a slip stitch all the way to the end. So now that I've folded the corner down a bit so it's a bit more flat, you can see that we're building that triangle shape, and we're just going to work our way all the way up. The 2 sides of our squares are joined up here, and I will meet you back when we get to this top point, and then that's when we'll be adding the 3rd square onto our bag. So now that we are at the top of our granny squares, your bag should be looking something like this, like a big triangle. And this is what your slip stitching should look like. I think it's just such a beautiful way to join granny squares. I think it just looks so pretty. But this is what we're working with, and now what we're going to do is we are going to join the other granny square to this side. So you can see this will be the bottom of your bag, this will be the side of your bag, and we're now going to be adding the other side of your bag. So what you want to do is, again, make sure your granny square is facing upright. Again, that's by making sure your V's are pointing to the right instead of the left. You want to make sure that you have slip stitch into the first chain of your chain 2 corners, like so. And then instead of working into the second chains on both of these squares, you want to join this square instead. This is where it starts to get a little bit fiddly. But you want to insert your hook into your second chain back loop on your first granny square, this one. And then you want to, again, making sure that your working yarn is underneath. Grab your granny square that is not attached, your third granny square, and you want to work into the second chain back loop. So this one here. This is your first one, and this is your second one. Insert your hook into the back loop, like so. Grab your working yarn, making sure it's underneath your work. Yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. And then again, you're just going to work your way around this granny square. So inserting into the back loop of your next stitch. Inserting into the back loop on your third granny square, and just join as we have been the rest of the squares. So insert into the back loop and the back loop again, pulling through all 3 loops. And that is how you attach your third granny square to make this bag. I will meet you back when you have worked all the way up this side and to this corner, and I will join you back at this corner. So again, we are at the corner point of our square. We have worked from this corner and we are now all the way up into this one, and we're going to do exactly the same as what we did on the last square, and we are going to flip it over. We're going to continue working on the same squares and just carry on joining until we reach this corner. And once we reach this corner, we are just going to finish off with a slip stitch. I will again join you back when you reach this corner, and if you want to re-watch how we did the corner just carrying on, go back to this corner that we did over here. So now that we are back at this corner, we're going to slip stitch into our corners again, into our chains in the corners. So we're just going to insert into back loops on both sides, like so. And what I actually liked to do when I did my first one was that I crossed over into the granny square opposite. So there's this little hole here, which is the first chain on that granny square. I just inserted my hook into there and inserted my hook into the second chain on our granny square over this side, like so. And I did one final slip stitch, and for me that just helped close this little gap that we had here, and also I think it finishes it off a bit nicer. And then literally what we're going to do is we're just going to yarn over, pull through and cut our end. And that is how you join the squares together. So now you have 3 squares all joined together and they look like triangles. This is the best way that I can show you, kind of see my little setup that I've got going on here. But this is how your bag should be looking. And now we are going to work on the straps. So for the first version of this bag that I made, I did 2 different colour straps, and that's what I'm going to be doing this time. It doesn't matter what side that you join either colour to, obviously that is completely your choice. And I chained 70 for this first iteration of this bag, and I think I'm going to chain 90 this time, just because I would like to have the straps be just that little bit longer so that I can tie a bigger bow. Obviously it just depends on the kind of size straps that you want and how big you want your bow to be, but for this first version I chained 70, and this time I'm going to be chaining 90 just to have that extra bit of length. You just need to pick what colour that you're going to be having your straps. Obviously mine are going to be these 2 colours, and then the outlining of them will be in the off-white. I'm going to show you with the mustard colour what we're going to be doing, and then you basically just repeat exactly the same steps on the other side with your other colour. So you want to get your yarn and you want to make a slip knot. like so, and then we literally, you take the corner of one of your granny squares, so the top corner, like so. It doesn't matter what side you're working on, but you just take the corner of your granny square and join your yarn, like so, like we did when we were joining new colours on the granny square. And then this is where you just start chaining however many you'd like to. So I'm going to chain 90 and then I will meet you back once I have done that. So now I have completed my chain of 90. What we're going to be doing is working back down our chain in the back loop only. So what you want to do is you want to turn over your chain. So you have the side with the bees and you have this side that has these bumps, and what you're going to want to do is work into those. So I'm going to be working into this one here. This bit is really fiddly and I do suggest that you take your time with it. You just insert into that single back loop. I'll show you again, like so. And we're just going to be single crocheting down the back of our chain. And you want to be really careful that you don't twist your chain. So some people twist their chain as they work down. You want to be really careful that you don't do that. So I'll show you again. This is our back loop. We're just going to insert our hook into there, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through, and we're going to do this down the entire length of the chain. I'll show you a few more times. So inserting into that back loop, pulling up a loop and pulling through two. Inserting into the back loop, yarn over, pull up a loop, and yarn over, pull through two. Just like that, and you want to do that down the entire length of your chain, and it will start to look like this. That's what you want to see. So I will meet you back when we are down at the end of our chain. So now that we are back down at the base of our chain, what we are going to do is we are going to work into these two loops here. We're going to insert our hook into both of those, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through two, like so, and that finishes the starting chain for us. It should look something like this. Don't worry if it's not perfect. And then what we're going to do is we're going to work back up the chain in this colour. So we're going to chain one, turn our work like so, and then we are just going to work back up our chain. So we have our chain, we're going to go into these here, making sure you go through both loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through two, and we're going to single crochet along this entire chain again, making sure when you insert your hook into the stitches that you are going through both of the loops that make up the stitch. So just working single crochets all the way along, like so. And I will meet back when we get to the top of the chain. So now we are at the end of our chain. This stitch here is the top of our chain. So we're going to insert and make sure both loops are on our hook. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through two. And we're going to do that 2 more times. Like so. And what that is going to do is that it's going to start creating a curve so that we can work back down this side. So then into the next stitch, as you can see, when we're working down this side, we do actually have a V to work down. So when you're working down this other side, you're just going to insert your hook and make sure you go through both loops like so. And just single crochet back down this side. And that is how you work around the top of the chain, and you're just going to single crochet all the way back down until you reach the bottom of the chain, and I will meet you back when we are at that point. So now that we are at the end of the strap, we're just gonna finish off by single crocheting into that final stitch. I also do a single crochet into the slip knot from the very beginning, like so, just to finish it off, and then we will cut off our yarn, make sure to leave a tail to weave in. And that is strap 1 complete. I know this looks a little bit funny, but I promise it will come together once we add the white border. So now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to do this again on the other side. You can do it in the same colour, you can do it in another colour, you can do whatever you want. I'm going to do this again in brown on the other side, and I will meet you back when we have both of these coloured straps done. Okay, so I'll just put you in 0.5 so that you can see the full bag so far. This is what yours should be looking like with the slip stitch joins and also the straps. So you should have one on each side, and they look something like this. I'm loving how this bag is looking so far. It looks incredible. And as you can see, the straps as they are currently, they are a little bit loose and a little bit floppy, and we need to make them a lot more sturdy so that they actually can carry the weight of items being in your bag. So what we're going to do is we're going to work 2 more rounds of single crochet along the edges of these straps and all the way down this bag. The way that I do this, it means that you can just go around it twice without having to cut your yarn. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our bag where our V is. You have your first set of 3 double crochets, and we're going to join into the second set of double crochets, just because when we get back to this corner, we're going to work a 3 together single crochet, and it'll just be easier if we don't have our join at exactly this point. So we're going to take our yarn. I'm using the off-white colour again. We're going to create a slip knot. And then we're not joining into this first set of 3 double crochets, we're joining into this second set. And for me, this is where I did an invisible join on the original granny square. So instead of having 3 stitches to work into at the top, I only have 2. So what I'm going to do so that I end up with having 3 stitches is I'm going to just insert into the gap and join my yarn like you normally would, and then I'm going to add another stitch into this like so, and then we're just going to work single crochets along the top of the bag, just putting 1 single crochet in each stitch, working your way up along the side of the bag. If you lose track of where you started, you can always add a little stitch marker into this point so that you know where you started your 2 rows, but as we're only doing 2 rows, I'm going to be able to keep track of it, so I'm just going to leave mine as it is. So when you reach your last cluster of 3 double crochets, you're going to single crochet into each of these stitches, 2 and 3. So when you get to the strap, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure that your strap isn't twisted. When my strap is considered the correct way round, like when you would work a granny square, you can see that my V's are to the right. And you can see when I lay it flat on my bag, you can see that this front stitch here is twisted. Whereas if I was to lay it the other way, this stitch is not twisted anymore and it is nice and flat. So we're going to be working on the wrong side of the strap. I like to work 2 single crochets into the corner of this granny stitch. So we're going to do 1, 2, And then working on the wrong side of your strap, we're going to just single crochet all the way down the strap, like so. And you can see that that helps create a nice strong strap. So you're going to work single crochets all the way down your strap like you did previously, and I will meet you when we get to the turning point of your strap. So your strap should be looking something like this now, and when you reach the very top, what you want to do is you want to add 3 single crochets into this very top stitch. So we have this one previously, we're going to just insert 1 single crochet. But this very top one, you're going to want to insert 3 single crochets into this same stitch. So 1, 2, and 3. And this helps create that curve that goes around the top of the strap. And then you're just going to work your single crochets back down the other side of the strap, like so. And then you are going to work all the way down the strap, and then when you get to this point, you'll single crochet into your final stitch, and then you'll add 2 single crochets into this chain space, and then single crochet into each stitch going down the side of the bag. And I will meet you when you get to the V in your bag, and I will show you how to do a 3 single crochet together in this space. So now we are down at our V, where we're going to do our 3 single crochet together. Where we're going to be single crocheting is into the corners of the 3 granny squares. So how to do that: you insert your hook into the first corner and pull up a loop, and then you insert your hook into this second corner and pull up a loop, and then you insert your hook into the third corner and pull up a loop. And then what we're going to do is we're going to yarn over and pull through all loops on the hook. And we have done 3 single crochets together, and that brings us 1 stitch. And then we're going to single crochet into the next few stitches as we normally would. And you can see that where we would normally have 3 stitches for our 3 single crochets, we've just got the 1 on the top. And that is how you do a 3 single crochet together. So now what you're going to do is you're going to repeat the exact same process that we did for our yellow strap on our brown strap, remembering when you get to the bottom of the strap to insert 2 single crochets into this corner before starting on your strap, and making sure to work on the wrong side of your strap. And then when you get to the end of your strap, inserting 3 single crochets into the very top stitch to create that nice curve going round. And then when you get back to the bottom of the strap, you're going to work 2 single crochets into this corner again, and I will meet you back on the other side down here where we're going to do another 3 single crochet together. So now you have worked your second strap, and it should look somewhat like this. Mine is nice and curly at the moment. And now you should be back at the second V in your bag, and now we're going to do another 3 single crochet together, inserting into the corner of your first granny square and pulling up a loop, and the second granny square and pulling up a loop, and the third granny square and pulling up a loop, yarning over and pulling through all 4 loops on your hook like so. And then single crocheting into the next few stitches. Like so. So now you have completed another 3 single crochet together, and you have done 1 full round around both of these straps. And you can see that we are now back at the start point where we started our last round. So now what we're going to do is we're going to slip stitch into this very first stitch that we made. Like so, and then we're going to chain 1 and single crochet all around the edge again. And this is where you might want to place a stitch marker so that you know where to finish once you have gone around another time. So now we're going to be working on the second row of off-white all around the straps. And what you're going to do is you're going to work your single crochets all the way up along the side of the strap. When you get to this point of the strap, you can just work a single crochet into each of the stitches like you would normally. You don't need to do the 2 single crochets in there, just 1 single crochet in each stitch. When you get to the end of your strap, you just want to do 3 single crochets into this top stitch and then work your way back down the strap. Again, just put in 1 single crochet into each of these stitches. And then when you get back down to this V, you're going to do another 3 single crochet together. So you're going to do your first insert into this stitch, your second insert into this stitch, and your third insert into this stitch, and then loop them all together. And then you're just going to repeat the same process on the other strap and on the other side, and then slip stitch to the beginning stitch. For those of you that are unsure on how to do this 3 single crochet together, I will show you how to do that now. So we are now back down at the V, so we're going to do another 3 single crochet together. So we're going to insert into this stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, insert into the next one, pull up a loop, and insert into that third one and pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops, and then just carry on single crocheting around the bag. So that is another 3 single crochet together complete. So now you just need to single crochet all around your final strap, remembering to do 3 single crochet in this top stitch to create that nice curve going round. So you'll work all the way back down here, and when you get down to this point, you'll do another 3 single crochet together like we just did. And then this is where we started, and you'll just slip stitch into this first stitch, and I will meet you back at this point. So now that we're back at the start of our round, we're going to do an invisible join into this stitch here. So you can do a slip stitch if you'd like to, but this invisible join just makes a nice seamless join to the rest of your work. So what you're going to do, you're going to finish here, you're going to pull up a loop and then cut the end. Like so. And then you're going to take your needle and thread it. We're not going into this first stitch, but we're going into this second stitch. And we're going through both loops. And then we're going back down into this stitch that we originally came out of, making sure to go through both of the loops on the back. Like so, and that creates an invisible join and looks very pretty. And then you can just weave in this end as we've already got it hooked. So I just like to work my way down the stitches. Like so, just going in a few different directions, and I normally try and end up so I can go through these again. Going back and forth. Like so. So now we just need to tie a bow in the top. You can either just tie a knot or you can tie a bow, and this is how I tie a bow. So So I go just a little bit further, about halfway down my straps, and then I cross them over and tie a knot. So we're going to go over and under, like so. And then with the remaining, we're going to fold them in half, or just over half, like so. And I like to hold them like this. And then we're just going to tie another knot. Like so. And that is how you create a little bow on the top. And obviously you can play around with this until you're happy with it. But that is how I create my little bow. I normally just flip that over, and that is how you create your bow. Hello, back to my face. So now the only thing that you need to do is weave in your ends, and then you have a completed granny square bag. These are the two colour variants that I have made now. I absolutely love both of these. I'm just obsessed, and you can see that my straps on this one are longer. So you've got a shorter strap one. I did a chain 70 or 80 for this. I think I said earlier in the video, and then I did a chain 90 this time, and I think I prefer the longer strap. I think it looks a little bit better, but yeah, this is the two bags I have completed. They just need their ends weaved in. I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial. I hope it was helpful and clear enough. If you do have any questions, please comment them down below, or if not, message me on Instagram or TikTok, and I will be more than happy to help you. If you need things explaining a little bit further, I can always make some little shorts on the little bits like slip stitching, or a really quick tutorial on granny squares. I do plan on making videos on how to do each stitch and how to do a granny square, like a separated dedicated video. So keep an eye out on my channel for those. Comment down below which colours you have made your granny square bags in and how you found this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.